What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. I'm back with yet another schedule preview and record prediction video, and I've really been looking forward to doing this one. We're going to be doing the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So, Minnesota last year was a team that surprised everybody. They were really, really good last year. Tanner Morgan showed out, as did Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson. They're losing Tyler Johnson this year, but they get Rashad Bateman back. You're also losing safety Antoine Winfield, which they're going to have to replace somehow if they want to be as good as they did last year. But overall, a lot of their defensive production is coming back. Minnesota's still going to be a good team next year. Minnesota was a team last year that surprised everybody, and that included beating Penn State. It was a home game for the Golden Gophers, but they still beat Penn State. And it was a huge win for the Golden Gophers program. So let's see if Minnesota can pull off another shocking upset like they did last year and finally be able to get to a Big Ten championship game, or if Minnesota and losing Tyler Johnson and Antoine Winfield are going to take a step back from where they were last year. All right, so here is the schedule for the Golden Gophers. When you look down there, their 2019 record was 11-2. Again, some big wins included Penn State. Some losses, though. I believe they lost to Iowa and then to Wisconsin last year. They did go to the Outback Bowl, and they stunned Auburn in the Outback Bowl. So that's how they got to 11 wins. And yes, you'll see up there, the home games are going to be in maroon, and the away games are going to be in gold. So without further ado, let's go ahead and look at the Golden Gophers schedule. And there's no better place to start in the first game of the season. They're going to open their season on a Thursday against Florida Atlantic. So Florida Atlantic is losing their head coach, Lane Kiffin. He is going to Ole Miss. And FAU is losing probably a really, really good tight end. They're losing him. He's gone. I can't remember his name right now, but he is gone and out. And there's not really a whole lot of talent elsewhere at Florida Atlantic. Still a pretty decent team, but Minnesota should have no trouble with the Owls. Then they get to play Tennessee Tech. This one should also be easy. The Golden Eagles are an FCS team, and the Golden Gophers are an FBS team, and one of the better ones at that. Minnesota will get the win here. Then it's a game against Iowa. So this one, I think, stands out to a lot of people as a good early season test, especially for Minnesota. We don't really know what Iowa's going to do. Iowa's losing a lot. Nate Stanley's gone. AJ Epinesa, Tristan Wirfs, lots of other guys gone. So we don't really know what the Hawkeyes are going to do. Minnesota does get the game at home. It's going to be a Friday night game under the lights in Minneapolis. It's going to be a fun game to watch. But I'm going to give Minnesota the win here. If it was on the road for the Golden Gophers, I maybe would consider Iowa having a shot. But with all the talent that Iowa's losing and just a sheer amount of talent that Minnesota is bringing back, Minnesota shouldn't have a big problem here with the Hawkeyes. Then they get to come back home, their fourth consecutive home game, and they get to play BYU. So BYU is a little bit of an interesting team. They've always been up and down, and you never really know what BYU is going to do. A couple years ago, they shocked Wisconsin and were fairly decent. Last year, they weren't all that great. So BYU, you never really know what to expect. And because you just don't know what to expect from BYU, Minnesota's got too much talent. I see the Golden Gophers winning this one easily as well. Then you get a road game against Maryland. So about a month ago, this game would not have been all that interesting, and Minnesota would have easily been able to win. But now Maryland is getting transfer quarterback from Alabama, Tua Tagovailoa, who is the brother of Tua Tagovailoa, who is now in the NFL draft. So all of a sudden, Maryland becomes somewhat of an interesting team. They're getting the brother. So I don't think Tua is as good as Tua is for obvious reasons. But nonetheless, he's a better quarterback than whatever Maryland had there in the first place. Maryland should be a fun team to watch this year. They might get a little bit better. And it could be interesting, maybe a trap game for Minnesota now with Tua, but overall, I just see that Tanner Morgan is a far better quarterback than Tua. Minnesota should have no trouble with the Terrapins. Then they get a road game against Wisconsin. So as I said in my Wisconsin video, I'm leaning towards the Badgers in this game. I am leaning towards the Badgers in this game because Minnesota, yes, they have a lot of talent, but this game is on the road. It's at Camp Randall Stadium. It's a very, very hard place to play. Wisconsin is going to be coming off a game against Notre Dame, so maybe that can put an impact to Minnesota. Maybe Minnesota will be able to beat Wisconsin at home because Wisconsin will be coming off a hard-fought game. But nonetheless, when you just look at on paper, Wisconsin's going to get their running game figured out as they usually do. I feel like Jack Cohn is going to be able to find his next wide receiver. Wisconsin is losing Quintez Cephas, but overall their defense should still be pretty good as well with Zach Bond there at linebacker. So I'm leaning towards the Badgers in this one. This is going to be a very close game, and I honestly, this is going to be one of the more underrated games in the entire year. Both teams are both teams are in the race for the Big Ten championship, but none of them are really in big playoff conversation. It's still going to be a fun game to watch, though. Then Minnesota has to play Michigan. So you get back-to-back games with Wisconsin and Michigan. It's going to be a hard stretch for them, especially now that Maryland has Tulia. Well, you can include Maryland in that stretch. Then you have to play Illinois on the road the game after. But next game after Wisconsin, you get Michigan. Michigan is a team that Michigan is a team for me that just needs to figure it out. They have to figure it out. They're losing their 1-2 punch at running backs with Zach Charbonnet and Hassan Haskins. Shea Patterson is also gone. I believe McCaffrey is going to step in there and be the quarterback. I believe Tariq Black went and transferred out, but they still have guys like Ronnie Bell. They still have their tight end, Nick Eubanks. Michigan still overall is going to be a really decent team, but you have to play Minnesota on the road. Minnesota's returning a wide receiver weapon that's far better than what Michigan has in Rashad Bateman, and Tanner Morgan has far more experience than McCaffrey. He never has started a game in college. Tanner Morgan has far more experience. I think Minnesota will get the win here. Close game, though, but Minnesota will get the win. Then they get a road game against Illinois. So this one is interesting because Illinois was a team that beat Wisconsin last year. They upset the Badgers at home. So Minnesota has to go on the road to play Illinois. And could we possibly see Illinois upset yet another Big Ten West team this year? Probably. It's very well possible. Illinois is a team that is only improving. They're just only getting better. Illinois is going to be a very fun, interesting team to watch this year with just how good they can get. This game, I feel like, is going to be closer than the experts predict. I still have Minnesota winning this one. Illinois definitely, I believe, is going to give Minnesota a scare. But I'm going to lean towards the Golden Gophers in this one. Just the talent gap between Minnesota and Illinois is too great. I see Minnesota having no problem with Illinois. Then they get another road game, Halloween, against the Michigan State Spartans. This also kind of sets off some bells as being a quote-unquote trap game. Michigan State is losing a lot, and now they're bringing in new head coach Mel Tucker. Of course, Mark D'Antonio is out, so Mel Tucker is going to step in. He was the old head coach at Colorado. So overall, Michigan State, they're talent-wise, they're not really improving either. Michigan State has only been declining in the last years with Mark D'Antonio and Mel Tucker. I feel like we got to give him a couple years before he can adjust to the Big Ten. It's a big step from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten. Michigan State possibly could give Minnesota a scare, but just right now, I don't see it at all. Minnesota wins this one. Then they get a they get a home game against Purdue. So Purdue is another interesting team. They're going to be returning a lot of guys from injuries, such as David Blau, their quarterback, Rondale Moore, speedy wide receiver, and just all-around playmaker. He's going to be coming back, and so many more weapons for Purdue are coming back. They were so beat up last year, and they still found a way to almost get into a bowl game. They didn't quite make it to one, but they could have snuck into a bowl game if they wanted to. So Purdue is going to be an interesting team to watch next year. This matchup, I probably would say, could give Minnesota a scare if it were to be played on the road. But Minnesota has this game at home, and I see there being no contest in this one. I like the Golden Gophers. So then they get their bye week, and this is a really late place for bye week. It comes in week 11. You don't ever want your bye week here because you had to play 10 straight games. Maybe you'd like a bye week in the middle of the season. The perfect spot for bye week would have been after Wisconsin, just before Michigan, or maybe after Maryland, just before Wisconsin, in between 2 road games there. But yeah, you never want your bye week this late in the season. Minnesota, I don't know if their bye week is going to affect them that much. Yes, they have their tough stretch. It probably will. They might drop a game because of exhaustion, but never want your bye week this late. So after their bye week, they're going to have to play Northwestern. So Northwestern is getting transfer quarterback from Indiana. They're getting Peyton Ramsey, which maybe could make Northwestern a step up just a little bit, but overall, Northwestern still isn't all that great of a football team. I see Minnesota winning this one easily. Then they get a road game against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So Nebraska is a very interesting team because, of course, Adrian Martinez is coming back, but you're losing guys like J.D. Spielman. I know technically J.D. Spielman is kind of sticking around the program, but from what it sounds like he's done. I live in Nebraska, so I get a lot of news from Nebraska. And I get talking with a lot of my friends who are Nebraska fans. And from what it sounds like, J.D. Spielman is not going to be playing football for the Huskers next year. So they're losing him. Adrian Martinez is coming back, and he just has got to figure it out. Played pretty well as a freshman, but as a sophomore, did not play all that great. He's just got to get the offense flowing, and the defense has to step it up. And if Nebraska can do that, maybe they can give Minnesota a scare. But as of right now, the Golden Gophers should easily win this one. All right, so now with everything being said and considered, I have the Golden Gophers going 10-2. So I've been going 10-2, one of the losses being to Wisconsin. But also, I see that maybe they could lose to Iowa. You know, it's early, it's at home. You know, maybe they could lose it. Maybe they'll lose on the road to Maryland. Maryland might be better than we think. Or they'll lose to Michigan. So this is also where I think the bye week is going to come into play with how late it is. Maybe exhaustion could get to them, especially with how we're not going to be able to practice all that much this year. They could drop one of those 2 road games, being either Illinois or Michigan State. Could drop one of those 2. So 10-2 is my prediction for the Gophers. So now let's look at the record range. And if you don't already know by now, what this is I take this team's worst case scenario and their best case scenario. That's kind of the range where I expect this team to be this season. Worst case scenario for the Golden Gophers is going to be 7-5. So 7-5 is worst case scenario to me. 5 losses are definitely to Wisconsin, to Michigan. And then it gets a little tougher from there. But I'm going to say Iowa, Maryland, Illinois, maybe Nebraska, possibly Michigan State. But if losing Tyler Johnson, Antoine Winfield, probably their best guy on offense and defense, respectively. You could argue Rashad Bateman might be a little better than Tyler Johnson, but arguably the best guy on offense, and then by far their best guy on defense. It could mean so much more to Minnesota than we all think. And with not being able to practice and find a replacement for either one of those guys, of course, you still have Rashad Bateman, but finding a replacement for Antoine Winfield might take a little bit of time. And with all the non-practice, it could affect Minnesota greatly. So I really don't see them going worse than 7-5, though. Then the best case scenario for the Golden Gophers is 12-0. I totally could see them going through 12-0. They don't really have any difficult road games. Yes, they could be quote-unquote trap games. Pretty much all 4 of them. Of course, you have the one tough road game against Wisconsin. But if you get through that, the rest of the schedule is very, very manageable. After they play Wisconsin, they get Michigan at home. And after that, you don't really have a team that stands out to you as being great. Probably all in the bottom half of the Big Ten in terms of power rankings, their last 5 games. So I totally could see Minnesota going 12-0. And really, to me, that Minnesota-Wisconsin game is going to dictate the outcome of the Big Ten West, which is absolutely wide open this year. But those are the 2 front runners. That game is totally going to decide it. But I totally could see Minnesota going 12-0 if they can get through Wisconsin and Michigan unscathed. But again, to reiterate, my current prediction for the Golden Gophers is 10-2. All right, so that's going to do it for my 2020 schedule preview and record prediction for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. Also consider subscribing if you're brand new to the channel or just enjoy my content. If you haven't done so already, please leave a comment down below and tell me your thoughts on the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And as always, until next time, play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.